And he started telling his own story about anxiety and depression. And he started telling his story, and I was like, oh, well, that sounds like me,
Mm.
And he said something else, and I was like, oh, it's like, man, that sounds like me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he'd say something else, and I'm like, oh, man, I've hit that same wall.
Yep.
So after a few days of this, I finally texted him and said, hey, how do you know if you're depressed? And he sent me a text back that said, do you think that you're depressed? And I'm guessing he probably already knew this from the conversations that we had had. I was slow to the party, basically, of my own self-realization. And I said, maybe so. And he's like, so basically he started walking me through like, okay, this is how first of all, depression in pastoral ministry is not that uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't need to feel a stigma that you're not strong enough or you're not good enough or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically hooked me up with a doctor that was familiar with, obviously a medical doctor, but that also was familiar with pastoral work. He was an elder at one of the church at the church.
At First Pres?
At First Pres. So he saw me and he started asking me these really basic questions about how long have I felt this way? And I was like, well, I mean, I guess like 2 years or so. And his jaw about hit the floor. He's like, you felt like this for 2 years and haven't said anything to anybody?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I thought this was just what ministry and what life felt like, And so anyway, obviously, so he hooked me up with a few really great counselors, and that was kind of it took a really long time though. I was on medication for a year and a half or so, and
what kind of medication?
I forgot the name of it.
Okay, like it's a prescribed medication.
Yeah, it's basically like Lexapro. I think it was just a generic version of Lexapro, but and I would have before this was my story, I would have thought like, there's no need to ever take, I just would have never guessed that would be me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But I'd gotten so used to things feeling dark and gloomy and gray and things just not feeling right.
Yeah.
But still having to perform under those pressures.
Yep. And
being able to muster up the strength to perform for as long as I needed to perform and then just crashing when I get home, just totally being wiped out. But then I started going to counseling and I was on Lexapro for a little while. And after a while, like the clouds started to part and I was like, I started to feel like myself again. I literally hadn't felt like myself in a couple of years. I was like, whoa, I didn't even know it was possible to be back here. I just thought that's what life as a Christian. I guess I had convinced myself that life was torture and then you die and you get to be with Jesus. That's just kind of what I had prepared myself for, I guess. Anyway, so that's there was a couple of really great books that helped me out a whole lot. Do you
remember any of them?
Yeah, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Peter Scazzaro. That was a really helpful book.
Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Can you write that down, Lincoln?
Basically, it's this pastor who had seen a whole lot of ministry success, and one day he had planted a church and it blossomed and grown a whole bunch. And one day his wife comes home and says, I love you. I'm not divorcing you, but I'm not going to your church anymore.
And he's a pastor there?
He's a pastor. He's the planting. So
did she do it?
Yeah. So that basically, I don't want to butcher the story because it's been a little while since I read it, but basically that's what led him down this spiral, realizing that he was just emotionally a wreck. And it kind of, the book is basically like what the Lord taught him through that. Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Another one was a book by Tremper Longman and Dan Allender. It's called The Cry of the Soul. And the whole premise is how our horizontal relationships with one another and emotions, those kind of things, how it reveals our biggest questions and how we actually feel about the vertical. So, if you're jealous of someone, it's not even about them. There's actually an anger between you and God that God wouldn't give you that gift or give you, those abilities or give you whatever.
Ah, right.
So it's like how the horizontal and the vertical are related.
Yeah.
And that gave me, before I read The Cry of the Soul, I would think I only had two emotions. I was either angry or happy. I didn't know that I was just sad sometimes, or I was lonely sometimes, or I was confused, or I was jealous, or I was just hurt, or I was just you know what? I didn't have a broad range of emotional language.
Right.
You know, it was just either I'm really angry about this and I know how to handle that.
Yep.
Or I'm really happy.
Yes.
Did
you do any like counseling or therapy with that?
Yeah.
And did that help you kind of see range of emotions and kind of help you process that?
Yeah. I mean, there are good counselors and there are, you know, not so good counselors.
Yep.
So I've been to a few of them, but
What's the name of the book? Is that what you need?
The Cry of the Soul.
The Cry of the Soul. Yeah.
By Dan Allender.
Yeah.
I think it's Dan Allender and Trimper Longman.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people, man, that are depressed or struggle with depression and think it's just them, you know, and don't.
Oh, that was me for sure.
Yeah, and don't realize that it's not just them, and they feel isolated and lonely, and man, I just want them to know, like, those people, like, it's like you're not alone,
right?
You know, it's not just you, and furthermore, what I appreciate, so you were on medication for this. I've never been on medication for that, but I'm sure there's been times where I probably should have been. And that's another thing I think that's unfortunate is a lot of people. I think this is getting better, but there's still a lot of stigma around and misunderstanding of the mind and depression, and maybe sometimes like people do anything to stay off of medication. Look, I'm all about that. Like I'm like my wife's a pretty healthy person, and she's all about this health stuff, and like, so she doesn't want. I kind of follow her lead on this. Like, look, if I don't need to be on medication, I'm not going to be.
Right.
I'm all about that.
Right.
But sometimes, like, something's wrong. Like, if you break your arm, for example, you're going to go put a cast on that thing. You're going to straighten it, put a cast on it.
Exactly.
You're going to do things to fix it. And sometimes the mind is like literally short on chemicals. Like, it's short on different types of things, or has too much of different types of things.
Absolutely.
And you need to fix that. And that's sometimes what's needed. Now, sometimes you just need to get some counseling, or maybe to get around some friends, or to straighten your thinking. Like, maybe sometimes it's just that. Which so far for me, like, that's been able to kind of correct it.
And for me, I totally agree with you. And for me, it was a kind of thing that I couldn't pray and read my Bible my way out of. I tried to.
Right. Yeah.
Like, maybe if I just take a weekend to get away and just really pray and read my Bible. Maybe I'm not reading enough. Maybe I'm not memorizing enough scripture. Maybe I'm not doing enough.
Yes.
So, but I just could not. I could not pray or read my way out of it.
Yep.
And literally to the point where I just had to grow to just live with whatever that feeling was. And I was like, well, maybe that's just how, you know, you're just supposed to make do until you get to heaven, you know, like, and honestly, honest to God, I just did not know that it was I thought depression was, if I were depressed, I thought it would be more dramatic than it actually was.
Right.
I thought it would be like, can't sleep, can't eat, can't get out of bed kind of thing.
Right.
But for me, I was highly productive. You know, the people around me probably didn't know that my wife probably did, you know, she knew something was off and something wasn't right. But a lot of people are like, day to day, I was being very productive. But part of the reason, go back to the brain chemistry thing, as I look back at it, there were just so many. Again, it was my this workaholic, idolatrous, accomplishing kind of idolatry that I had. And I was just not sleep. I mean, I would go to bed at 2 a.m. and wake up at 6 or 6:30, and I would just do that every single day.
Oh, were you doing that because you couldn't sleep, or?
Well, I had convinced myself that sleep was for the weak or something stupid like that. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I wouldn't have articulated it like that, but I was just
sleep when I'm dead.
Exactly, and that was where it was leading. You know, I couldn't. I recognized that I couldn't keep up the pace that I was at.
Yeah.
But my thought was, if I'm really serious about making, you know, the Great Commission was just tattooed on my heart and on my mind. Make disciples of all nations, right? So if I'm really serious about that, why can't I give another hour? Why can't I give another
Oh
Why can't get
man,
so
yeah,
so if I'm
yeah,
really serious, why can't I just do why
yeah,
can't I go to the dorm at 1 a.m. and stay in there
yes.
while the
Because you're not God, bro.
ex-
You're
but see
John
I
Farmer.
was too
You're a
stupid to
man.
I was too stupid to
Just
realize
just to get
that.
out of bed and eat breakfast and go do some things that are positive to the world and contribute to the common good. Like, dude, that's at the end. That's about all we can do.
But see I just didn't now I'm much closer. I think I still struggle. I don't think I'm quite there. I
Yeah.
probably should be closer to that,
Yep.
but I have learned to embrace limitations. But at that point in my life, I'm young and
Yeah.
I'm ready to get after it.
Sure.
And if Jesus died on the cross for my sin, if he's given that, I had been conditioned. What would I not give in
Right.
response? What
Right. No, I see
what
that.
what
Yeah.
what kind of
Yeah.
response is so I mean, there's nobody more all in than I was. It felt like,
Mm-hmm.
So I was all in and I was totally paying the price for being that kind of all in.
Yeah.
So I've learned, I forgot, I think it might be Robert Murray McShane that said on his deathbed as a young man, he said, that God has given me a message and a horse. I have killed the horse and no longer can take the message.
Oh man.
And that was one of those wake up calls where I was like, okay.
Yeah, I love that, dude. That's actually really helpful.
So yeah. That was one of
See,
those wake up calls that made me go, all right, well, if that's true, then obviously 5 years of, all out, no holds bar ministry is not as effective as 30 years of consistent and
yeah,
persistent
yeah,
ministry.
yeah. See, I think. Well, by the way, I was going to ask you when you came off those medications. How was that? Was that awful? Was that hard, or was it not too bad? Like,
No. Um, again, I had a great mentor
okay,
that had dealt with this before. So
mm-hmm.
all the while, first of all, I was on a really, really low dose.
Okay. And when you come off, do you just like stair step down? Or you just stop one day?
You're supposed to stair step down.
Okay, you just stopped.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, it's enough.
Okay.
It was like literally so the first thing was they told me for a year, whether you feel changes or not, you have do not miss a day. This stuff is messing with your brain chemistry. Basically, I'm not smart enough to understand all the terms and all that, but basically it is resetting things in your brain, serotonin levels and those
Yes.
kind of things. So they said don't, and unfortunately at the very beginning I would take it for a couple of weeks and start to feel like, oh man, I think the burden is lifting in some ways.
Oh.
And then I'd not even intentionally, but I'd accidentally stop, and there were just these really horrific crashes that happened, and I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
it's dangerous to just stop cold turkey. So I'd done it for over a year consistently without missing, and then after talking, the other thing is Jaquel and I were doing couples counseling as well.
Mm.
So she was learning how to interpret some of my craziness.
Mm-hmm.
And so with the permission of her, it was like, okay, we just didn't get it. After we finished the last thing, we just didn't get it refilled.
Oh, I see.
And the idea was if I'm acting crazy,
Yeah.
not crazy like, it was never aggressive, like,
Sure.
but it was more implode than explode.
Yeah,
If it
yeah.
looks like I'm just like totally
Yep.
getting eaten alive,
Yep.
then we'll go back. But
Okay.
thankfully, we haven't
didn't need to.
Mm-mm.
And when you would like forget to take some of those medications for a season, and you'd like kind of revert, like what happened?
Okay, so it would, man, the craziest thing that happened. I was the chaplain for the basketball team at Payne College. So I convinced my wife to let me get an Xbox, right? So
For the team,
right?
right?
Well, which really was a great ministry tool. The guys would come over to our apartment and they'd do laundry and we'd play 2K,
Nice.
like NBA 2K together. But one night, she's off doing something with her friends or whatever, and I'm at home by myself playing NBA 2K. I hadn't taken my medication in probably a week and a half, and I didn't realize it at the time.
Oh wow.
So I'm playing NBA 2K, and I just get filled with a kind of rage that I kind of never felt before.
Hmm.
And I like broke. This is like solid wood chair that was in our apartment, and something happened in the video game, which I'm really not a big video gamer at
Mm-hmm.
all. But I just started like I picked up this chair and just started slamming it, and it shattered to pieces. And at the end of it, I'm like, "What the crap?" Like I
Mm-hmm.
didn't recognize myself. Like
Mm-hmm.
what? I've never. That's not. It's not even really my personality to go
Yep.
ballistic like that. And I'm like, "What is going on?" And then I start tracing it back, and I realize, oh, that's why they said don't just stop your
Right.
medication.
Yeah.
So
Yep. Yeah. Well, years ago, I felt so hopeless that I've cut myself, and uh, and just but a kind of a sullen like the way it manifests itself is more in more recent years, just like being real like hopeless and sullen and just depressed, like don't want to do things
mhm.
in the evening, really just want to go watch TV,
Yeah,
and just be
yeah,
kind of spiral down into your
hmm
little world and
hmm
not just so. But I I think what helps me a lot is, well, there has been at least a time I can think of where like what it took to change it was actually a change in my circumstances. Um, and so I don't know I don't know how I would have gotten out of that one time if it like my circumstance hadn't changed.
hmm
Um, but definitely what for sure for me, and I know this is not for most people, probably not for most people, and certainly not for everyone. But one thing that really does help me is exercise.
Oh yeah,
And that's just for
oh
me.
yeah.
But like I can feel if I can go to CrossFit 3 days a week with some consistency, that really, really
It
helps
changes
me. Like
everything.
yeah, it's the lead domino. It changes my mind. It changes my outlook. It changes my worldview. Like it really does. It does help for sure. Um, but no, it's not for everyone. Like sometimes you gotta either go see a counselor or a therapist or like change the chemistry of your
Yeah,
brain with
yeah,
medications or something.
yeah.
So thankfully we have these doctors. Oh, this is the other thing I was gonna say. Like one time this was a while ago, but I was so hopeless, man. I was up late. It was probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was on our back patio, dude. It's when you're in these situations, man, it's like you don't talk to people because you feel shamed
hmm
and you feel like if you just get your shit together, like like you don't need to you don't need to like bring them into your crap. You
hmm
know what I mean? And like hopelessness is one just a dude. Hopelessness is a killer, bro. Like if you don't have hope, dude, nothing else is gonna be right.
hmm
And I felt so hopeless and so alone. I was smoking a cigar and I just took that cigar and boom, right on my left arm, bro. Right there.
mm
Like, and dude, that freaking hurts. I
hmm
don't suggest it for
Yeah,
anyone
yeah. That doesn't sound
because you
good.
feel that, bro.
Yeah.
You like, there was a mark for a long
hmm
time, but just that hopelessness and that sense of loss and just, dude, it's the worst, man. It really is the worst. So if people are out there like, dude, you are not alone and
Yeah.
there are better days. There
Yeah.
will be better days. Like hang in there.
Yeah.
Do not quit.
Yeah.
Like there's been so many times where Pastor Ray has either said it or it was in a sermon, I can't remember. But it's just this idea of like 5 more minutes. Like just continue on for
hmm
5 more minutes.
Yeah.
Like just don't quit. Like not now, right? Like no, don't quit yet. And like that is, there's been many times where I'm like, bro, you son of a good, you don't quit.
Right.
Not right now. Five
The
more minutes.
and the other thing is because sometimes that's not even enough. The other thing is you got to watch your circle. Who are you letting in your life? Like it's really really important. Proverbs, what is it? 17, either 3 or 17:17. Um a friend loves always and a brother is born for adversity.
Yeah.
And man, if I didn't have a wife that is as supportive as she is and as like willing to handle the craziness and so on the same page, like it's not just me that wants to make Christ known. Like that's where we are locked in together in that. But if I didn't have her, and if I didn't have just a couple of friends that I could go to and just kind of like fully kind of let it out, I don't think I would have made it through because
Yeah.
I was. It became really clear to me how insufficient I was. Like
Right.
I didn't have enough to just because
Yep.
I'd used all that already. I already
Yep.
used whatever that was in the tank that says just 5 more minutes. Go just a little bit.
Yep.
I'd used all that and I was exhausted.
Yeah.
I didn't have another second.
Yep.
So if I didn't have other people in my life that I could fully lean on, I would have
Yeah.
been I would have been devastated.